So our aim is to complete yesterday's discussion and straight away dive into details of one infectious disease, that is cholera, and then see some worked example questions. So yesterday we were on this slide about acquired immune deficiency syndrome. The short form of this syndrome is called AIDS. Okay. What exactly is AIDS? AIDS is not a disease. AIDS is a syndrome. Syndrome means a collection of diseases and disorders. So that means AIDS is not just a single disease, but it makes the body so weak that the body can actually get infected by any other diseases, or can also get any non-communicable disease also. So that means this is AIDS is a syndrome where when a person has a weak immune system. So the immune system stops fighting back against foreign pathogens. So who is the main reason because of which a human being can get AIDS? The causative agent is the HIV virus, or human immunodeficiency virus. You can see in the name itself what it does is mentioned. So the immunodeficiency virus, what does it do? Just like deficiency of nutrition, the person becomes deficient of immunity. So the white blood cells fail to recognize this virus, and what is unique about this virus? This virus can only survive in our human white blood cells. They will, if you take them out of the white blood cell, they will not survive. So this virus is unable to survive outside the human body. And how is this virus transmitted from infected to uninfected person? Through intimate physical contact, that is sexual intercourse or childbirth, sharing of needles, incorrect blood transfusions. In all of these events, a person can acquire human immunodeficiency virus from an infected person. Now what happens is, this human immunodeficiency virus is very smart. It will infect the white blood cell and stay latent or dormant inside the white blood cell for more than 2 to 7 years. Sometimes people get the virus, but they may not have AIDS. That is, the virus is not showing any symptoms. Like the person is not showing any symptoms of having HIV virus, sorry. So after 2 to 3 to 4, 5, 6, 7 years, sometimes people even after the span of 10 years start showing symptoms of AIDS. That is, if they do a little bit of physical activity, they fall sick, or if they are exposed to any harsh environmental conditions, they easily catch infections, and they easily, most of the time they're suffering from different types of diseases, not recovering properly. These are all symptoms, and the only way to know if a person has HIV or not is to do a blood HIV test. Now, when people learn about HIV and AIDS, there are some misconceptions, but we all should be aware about them. That is, you cannot get HIV because we say that by intimate contact, HIV can be transmitted. But actually, HIV does not get transmitted through any of these activities like touching, kissing, hugging, sharing food. HIV does not get transmitted through insect bites. That means if an insect has bitten an HIV patient and then bites an uninfected person, then HIV doesn't get transmitted through the insect. HIV also does not get transmitted if an infected person has used the toilet seat. So toilet seat contact doesn't cause HIV transmission. Bathing under the same shower or using common bathrooms does not transmit HIV. If a HIV positive person is sneezing or coughing, that doesn't mean that they are releasing HIV into the air. So you cannot get HIV through sneeze and cough or through sweat, contact with sweat of the person. The only way HIV can get transmitted is when direct blood to blood contact happens, or due to sexual intercourse which is unprotected. That is, semen and vaginal fluid come in contact. Okay. So this was something that I wanted to clearly discuss in the class. If there is any question, you can ask me. We have a minute. Is there a cure or vaccine? There are vaccines developing for HIV, and recently there has been a vaccine which is said to be very, very successful than all the previous ones. So you can always Google about HIV vaccines, what are the modern age vaccine names, you can self-explore that. And when we learn about infectious disease in our AS level syllabus, we can explore that too. Ritika is asking, why is HIV not transmitted through contact of saliva? Because Ritika, HIV virus is found in blood cells, white blood cells, and your salivary glands don't contain any blood cells. Salivary glands, there is no chance that HIV virus will infect cells of your salivary gland. The salivary glands are all around in your lower jaw, behind the ear, under the tongue. So these glands are only focused about secreting and producing saliva. They have no contact with the white blood cells or red blood cells. So that's why and also the HIV virus cannot survive in any other cells of our body. They can only infect and live in white blood cells, specifically T lymphocytes. Not all white blood cells. There is a particular type of white blood cell called lymphocyte. They only infect that white blood cell. Semen doesn't have blood. That's a good question. Semen doesn't have blood, but it is often seen that through sexual contact, virus, actually the HIV virus, because semen is richly supplied with many nutrition and nourishment and also has a high vascular supply, the HIV virus is found in the seminal fluid. How it is found, you still don't have the biological knowledge to exactly understand that. So when we study details about how secretions are produced from your glands, that's when you will understand why the virus can easily go into reproductive organ secretions and no other parts of the body. Yes, so the virus will weaken your immune system and that's it. The virus is not causing cholera, malaria or anything. The virus is making the immune system so weak that the body fails to fight against a collection of diseases that the person is facing. Means a collection of infections. So if the person lives in a very poverty-stricken condition, they will easily get cholera, malaria, tuberculosis. And when you get these infectious diseases, you become weaker and weaker. So once a person has started showing symptoms of AIDS, they need to be diagnosed and they should start treatment. Otherwise, their lifespan becomes very short.
Miss Amrita, what if a person by any chance gets, a medical test for HIV and he gets to know that he has HIV, and is there a chance by medical treatment before it becomes AIDS, he can be cured?
That's a very good question. Once you are HIV positive, treatment is not started, but lot of precautions are taken after that. Okay, because if a person is HIV positive, they may still be healthy. They may still have no symptoms, no AIDS. So what will you treat them for? There is nothing to treat them. Once the virus starts acting up and affecting the immune system cells, then they are treated with antiviral drugs. The antiviral drugs were very generic earlier in the 90s, but now the antivirus drugs are very well advanced. So they will just go and target those T lymphocytes where the virus has invaded. Very specific antiviral drugs and very effective antiviral drugs are now being produced. Yes, HIV is a sexually transmitted disease. That's why I told HIV can be transmitted through sexual intercourse if there is no protection taken. HIV is actually not a disease. HIV is the virus AIDS is a STD, ASBA. I just want to rectify that. HIV is the virus and AIDS is a sexually transmitted disease. Yes. So is gonorrhea. Okay. We learn more about them when we do individual infectious disease study in our syllabus. So with the interest of time, I will now move ahead and ask you to check your tables. Please note that all the scientific names have been written in italics, but because you are writing in your hand, you cannot write in italics in handwritten format. So all causative agents whose names are written in scientific terms, you need to underline them separately. For example, if you're writing Vibrio cholerae, you need to make sure that you underline Vibrio and cholerae separately. If you're writing Plasmodium, you will write Plasmodium and then underline it. Also make sure when you're writing Vibrio cholerae, the first name's first letter should be capital. Similarly, Plasmodium's P will be capital. Human immunodeficiency virus is not a scientific name, so no need to underline it. And for tuberculosis, the bacteria that causes tuberculosis, which affects our lungs, they are called Mycobacterium tuberculosis. If you write this, then you underline Mycobacterium and tuberculosis separately. And remember that Mycobacterium should be written in capital and tuberculosis in small. There are two types of tuberculosis bacteria. One is transmitted from human to human and one is from cattle, that is cows and goats to human. That is called Mycobacterium bovi. Okay, Mycobacterium is written in short form here, but capital letter, and bovi in small. So this is transmitted from cows to human from the udder of the cow. The udder is the nipple of the cow from where the milk comes out. So if the what do you say? If the dairy from where your milk supply is coming, if they are not hygienic, then these cows get infected with Mycobacterium bovis. And when the milkman comes in contact with the udder of the cow, they transmit the bacteria from the cow to the milk container. And if the people who are consuming that milk are not boiling it properly or having raw milk, then they ingest this bacteria. So how many bacterial diseases do we have on our list? We have
4.
this and this, 2 bacterial diseases. Vibrio cholerae is a bacteria and Mycobacterium tuberculosis is a bacteria. How many protists do we have on our list? We have 1, that is Plasmodium, and viruses on our list is HIV. Okay, you have to remember what kind of organism they are. Name of the causative agent, name of the disease. Lots of multiple choice questions come around this. Okay, moving on. Some things to watch out. As an AS level learner, you have to be very careful that you don't use the word germs. This is not acceptable. This is a very common man term and germs mean nothing in biology. We have to use the term pathogen because germs is such a wide term. It can include anything that is actually not a germ. Ritika is asking what is the difference between parasite and productist. So Ritika, do you know that all living organisms on this earth have been classified into different groups like kingdom, phylum, class, order, family, genus, and species? Have you heard about
Yes.
taxonomic classification of animals and plants?
Not in detail, but a
Not in
brief
details, but
idea.
you know about classification, right?
Yeah.
So Productist is a group in that system of classification, which comprises of all the unicellular eukaryotic organisms. Means they have well-defined nucleus, they have membrane-bound organelles, but they are single-celled. So Plasmodium, say Plasmodium vivax or Plasmodium falciparum, they're all unicellular. but they are eukaryotes. So these are all Productists. So that those group of organisms have this name called Productist, and they all fall under that category, under that group. Did I answer your question, Ritika?
Yes, but then what exactly is a parasite then?
Coming to that. So Productist is a name of a taxonomical group, means a group of organisms who have a certain similar feature. Parasite is a habit or a mode of nutrition, or what kind of interaction an organism has with others. Okay, like human beings are not parasite. Human beings are omnivorous. They can feed on anything around, and they are solitary, like food. They are heterotrophic. They depend on other organisms, but not so dependent that if other organisms don't provide food, they will die. Or they, to be actually more precise, parasite means an organism who is completely dependent on another organism for food. If you separate the parasite will not be able to survive independently. Okay, so I'm sorry about the previous explanation, that was very confusing. A parasite basically looks for its own benefit. It's a relationship where one organism is benefiting from another organism, but the other organism is getting harmed. So when you have head lice, for example, the person who has the lice is going through a lot of pain, itching, irritation, scalp skin, because of scratching, scalp skin breaks. Sometimes there is swelling. So there is bodily pain and discomfort. But what is happening to the head lice? The head lice is benefiting. Head lice is getting blood meal, right? So that is a parasitic relationship. Another example is mosquito. Mosquito cannot survive without, if it's a female mosquito, it needs a blood meal. So without the blood meal, it will not survive. So its only interaction with human being is for food. Okay. Whereas in a
Yes.
symbiotic relationship, what is happening? Ritika, can you tell me? What do you know about a symbiotic relationship?
So we were told that in a symbiotic relationship, either both of them are helping each other in some or the other way, or at least one is being harmed.
No, that is not symbiotic. If one is being harmed, that is parasitic. Okay, symbiotic relationship, mutualistic relationship, commensalism, these are all different types of interaction between organisms. If an organism is interacting with another and harming that other organism, then it is a parasite. And that relationship is parasitic relationship. A symbiotic relationship means there is a partnership between two different types of organism and both are benefiting from each other. You have studied this in environmental management this year. So symbiosis means coexisting and benefiting each other. Just like some leguminous plants have root nodules with nitrogen fixing bacteria in it. The nitrogen fixing bacteria will supply soluble nitrates to the plant, and in return the plant is giving shelter to the bacteria in its roots. Okay, so in short, a parasite is an organism who interacts with another organism only for its selfish benefits. After it receives its benefit, it's going to leave the host, or it will never leave the host until the host dies. Or it will shift from host to host only for its own benefit. Did I answer your question, Ritika?
Yes.
Also remember one thing, that a parasite not necessarily has to be Productist. A parasite could be a worm, plants could be parasites. Some small plants are there like orchids. Orchids are actually parasitic plants. They grow on branches of trees and derive nutrition from their branches. They cannot make their own food. Okay, so parasite is a type of, it's a habit or a nature of a particular organism, and it's based on what relation it has with its host. Most of the time it harms the host. Okay. Okay, let's not divert from the topic further. and come back to the information on the slide. Germs as an alternative to pathogen is not acceptable in your academic language. A common error is to use the term disease rather than pathogen. Example, students, what they do is they say the disease enters the cell instead of saying that the pathogen infects the cell or the virus or the bacteria infected the cell. Students write that the disease has entered the cell. That is wrong. You have to remember that disease is the condition that arises after the pathogen has infected the body. Okay, so this is a wrong statement. Disease entered the cell. Sometimes what they do, they name a disease with the help of a pathogen's name. So instead of saying that Plasmodium has entered the red blood cell, they will say malaria has entered the red blood cell, which is wrong. Instead of giving the name of the pathogen, if you're writing name of the disease, then also that will not be accepted. One more common error is while writing scientific names of causative agents, students forget to follow scientific nomenclature conventions. What is scientific nomenclature convention? Have you ever in 10th grade, I think in unit 1, you must have learned about binomial naming system. How animals are given two names, first name and a second name. Do you remember the rules of that binomial naming system?
First letter should be capital. The
Okay.
second letter should
Second
be in
letter
small.
or
No,
first
I
letter of
believe
second word?
first letter of the second word should be not capital.
And what about underlining?
I don't remember about underlining.
Both the first and the second name have to be separately underlined. I showed that in the previous slide also. And if you're writing the scientific name in a typed format, then it should be written in italics. Yes, Asma, you're right. Italics are used to type the scientific name. Okay. So these are common errors that students do in exams. And time and again, I will be bringing these common errors on slide because these are posted by examiners. So after a result is published, the chief examination officer or the senior examiners who check papers of different zones, they write a summary of what are the common mistakes students make in different units. And I have pulled out those points from there. These are common mistakes that students actually make year after year. So we have to be mindful about that. So here are some rules of writing scientific name that you should be careful about. Capitalize the first letter of the genus name. So let's say Mycobacterium bovis. This is a TB bacteria. The first letter, the first word in the scientific name is the genus name, and the second word is the species name. Genus name should start with capital letter. Species name should start with small letter. Whole scientific name should never be written in capital letters. Do not capitalize species name or whole name. Both names should be underlined or italicized. If you're typing, it should be in italic. If you're writing, it should be underlined. Okay. Here I have given an example of TB bacteria, but you can also see another example of how I'm writing scientific name of human. So human scientific name is Homo sapiens. So I'm underlining them because it is handwritten. H is capital, S is small. There is a space between two names and underlined separately. Okay, and this is for tuberculosis bacteria. What is genus and what is species is a different topic for another time. Okay, again, just to briefly tell you, Muskan, genus is a taxonomic group. Genus is a group of organisms who belong to very similar species. So when you study kingdoms and classification in A level, you'll come across what genus actually means. All right. Coming to our discussion around cholera. Okay. I just quickly change the size of the text. It seems little weird right now. Okay. So a couple of days ago, you did a reading activity around cholera. And today we are going to learn a little about this disease. So why are we learning about cholera is because once upon a time, just like COVID-19 is a big pandemic right now, in the early 19th century, that is around 1883 or 1890, there was a point when the whole world was struggling with this disease spreading everywhere. And it was a pandemic. First, it started as an epidemic, like a sudden outbreak of cholera in the Ganga River Delta of India during British rule. And it started spreading to other countries like Africa, South America, and all European countries. During the 19th century, cholera spread across the world from its original reservoir, means original point, that is the Ganges Delta in India. 6 subsequent pandemics killed millions of people across all continents. Imagine we have just one COVID-19 pandemic happening for lasting since 2020 to now. And when in the early 19th century, when cholera was spreading, it was equivalent to 6 back-to-back pandemics. And it killed many, many millions of people. The current 7th pandemic occurred in 1961 in South Asia, and it spread to Africa in 1971 and all the American countries in 1991. With time, the cholera bacteria has become weaker and weaker in its infective ability, and therefore cholera has become endemic in many countries. Endemic means, we have studied this term earlier. What is the meaning of the term endemic with respect to diseases? Anyone?
When the virus is no longer able to kill many people.
Is cholera caused by a virus?
Bacteria.
Okay, but no, your answer is not correct. Sudden increase in number of cases is epidemic, Ritika. So your answer is also wrong. Found
Decrease
in a
in the
certain
cases.
area, Khushi, your answer is very close. So endemic means when a certain disease becomes so frequent that at any point of the year, if you go to that country, you will see at least 1 or 2 people are suffering from that disease. So that disease is going to now stay with that population forever. Someone or the other is going to get the disease throughout the coming years. Okay, so just like now, gradually cases of COVID are reducing, and we are believing that different countries are now becoming endemic to COVID-19. That is, yes, there will be cases, but people will be affected lesser. Deaths will be very, very less, but people will still be getting COVID-19. Okay. So what are we learning? We are basically, these are our objectives to describe and explain what causes a cholera and how does it produce symptoms. That is, externally, bodily, what are some changes that happen if a person is suffering from cholera? How does a doctor diagnose these symptoms? Identify the cholera pathogen as a prokaryote. We are going to see that the cholera pathogen is Vibrio cholerae, which is a prokaryotic organism. And we are also going to explain, learn how to explain different strategies worldwide that have been applied to treat and prevent cholera from spreading. So this world map over here is showing you how cholera has spread across the world between 2007 to 2009. So it has been represented in the form of spheres or ball-like mappings. And the meaning of the sphere is mentioned in this index. If the sphere has a tiny white ring in the center, it means that there were 5,000 cases, then it increased to 10,000, then it increased to 20, to 50, to 100,000. And this was the data collected by the World Health Organization of United Nations. and to estimate that cholera cases officially reported by the countries only were actually 5 to 10% of the actual number of cases. So actually, if the sphere shape looks this much in Afghanistan, that is because to the government, only that many cases were reported. But in reality, there were more than that cases. Okay. In India, in reality, these many cases were reported, but actually there were more than this case. So you can see how the disease has spread to neighboring countries faster and easily than to continents which are across the ocean. It was not easy to spread because distances were more. People traveling into countries that were nearby were more. So spreading of the bacteria was easier to neighboring countries. You'll also notice that most of the countries which were affected by cholera are also developing countries or low economic development countries. Means they already have a lot of financial crisis, economic crisis, housing, urbanization is not very advanced. So people live in close proximity with each other, and people also live in unhygienic conditions in low economically developed countries. Now, this cholera bacteria produces a toxin. Toxin means a poisonous substance. Okay. Where exactly does the cholera affect in your body? Can you recognize which part of your body these are?
Intestine.
Can you see the stomach? This is the stomach. This over here is your stomach, human stomach. And this portion is your large and small intestine. Okay, this is a control, means this is a healthy digestive system. Look at this is a cholera patient. This is a patient who was affected with cholera. This is their digestive system. Which part of the digestive system looks strange or weird? Comparing with the healthy digestive system, which part of the digestive system looks unhealthy in the patient? Anam, any observations? Anam, can you hear me? Anam, can you hear me? Anam, please respond. Otherwise, I will not know whether you are there in the class or not. Okay, I can already see responses. You are right. It is the intestine, and not large intestine, but the small intestine. The small intestine has swollen and it looks larger than the large intestine. That means something is happening. The cholera bacteria is doing something to the intestine of the person, because of which it is swelling. Okay. Yes, Ishita, go ahead and ask.
I had a question that cholera can actually do this, or how does it, how does the intestine swell, is there
Swell.
something that swell, what does it does, is
Yeah,
there
we are coming
it
to it. We are coming to it. We are seeing what exactly does cholera bacteria do. So cholera bacteria produces, yes, this is a real human digestive system. Khushi, how will I show you original size in a photograph? On your phone screen, it must be appearing this much. Is your digestive system this tiny? No, right? So it's a photograph. The real digestive system will have many, many meters long. Your intestines are about 6 to 8 meters long. And stomach dimensions are at least as big as your palm size. and it varies from person to person. So it's not exactly this much size, but this is a real image, real photograph. Okay. Pinky, is your mic not working? Then when I called you, you did not respond. Okay, we need to respect everyone's time. So I request you that when we are having online classes, please respond when I'm calling you out, just to share what you're understanding. And if you're not being able to respond, tell me in the chat. Otherwise, I'm just calling out and time goes by. Please be careful about this and respectful about everyone's time. Okay, so yes, the intestine swells, and that is why the wall of the intestine looks stretched out. And actually, the cholera bacteria produces a toxin called Cholera Gene. Okay, we are going to study about Cholera Gene in a minute. So Cholera Gene is a toxin produced by Vibrio cholerae. What it does is, along the walls of our intestine, we have lots of ion channels. These ion channels' job is to absorb sodium ion, chloride ion, potassium ion from the digested food in the intestine into the intestinal wall. But this cholera gene is going to open all these channels in such a manner that from the wall, ions move into your intestinal lumen. So when ions move into the intestinal lumen, water also starts moving in, and that swells your intestine. Okay, we just watch an animation in a bit. Quick look at what are the symptoms. Symptoms is profuse loose motion, extreme loose motion, vomiting, and instead of saying loose motion in our examination academic language, we use the word diarrhea. Diarrhea means the person is going to pass out stool or is actually going to poop, but instead of having solid stool or bowel, they will just be passing out volumes and volumes, liters and liters of water, watery stool. So there will be no solid undigested waste in the stool, but it will be just 2 to 7 liters of just water is lost from the body and through the anus as well as vomiting. And it is clear fluid. This leads to shortage of water in your body. If the person is immediately not treated, they may lose 10 to 12 liters of diarrhea from their body, and that will lead to death. Fatal means the person will not survive. So you can see how weak these people look because of cholera symptoms. Anyone who is showing the symptoms is a symptomatic person. And for every symptomatic person, there are 3 to 100 people who get the infection but remain asymptomatic. That what does this mean? That means that if a person is infected with cholera and they're not treated and they're passing diarrhea, and that watery stool is mixing with the nearby river or water body or mixing with clean drinking water, and other people are unawarely drinking the contaminated water, then there is a chance that 3 out of 100 of them are going to show the symptoms. What does this tell? That is it a disease that everyone will show symptoms, or there is less chance that someone will show symptoms? I want to know your opinion. From this last statement, do you think anyone can get cholera easily, or is it slightly rare? Less chance. What do others think? Same, less chance. Do you know why it is less chance? Can you guess why the chances are slightly rare? Yes, Khushi. I'll just take you to the previous slide, and this might help you to find that relation. Immune system, no. Look where the cholera bacteria. See, if you're drinking contaminated water or eating contaminated food, then you're taking in cholera bacteria. think about which parts of your body the cholera bacteria is traveling when you're eating that contaminated food. It's going from your mouth to food pipe to, yes, and what is there in your stomach?
Intestine.
Intestine is there in your stomach. Very good.
No. Hydrochloric acid.
Acid, stomach acids are very strong. So why do you understand why only 3 out of 100 people show cholera-like symptoms? What happens in the other 90% or 95%?
The acids kill the bacteria.
So most of the time what happens, our body protects us from the Vibrio cholerae by the stomach acids. Stomach acids kills it. But there are some strains of Vibrio cholerae which are very resistant to even a stomach acid. They escape it. And once they enter the intestine, that is where they start the trouble. They don't do anything in the stomach. They cause all the problem in the intestine. So who is responsible for this cholera? It is this bacteria. This is a very powerful microscope image. Otherwise, the bacteria is invisible to our eye. It's so small. And you can see this bacteria has a tail like flagella to swim. That's how it moves in water. Read the spelling, Vibrio cholerae. Vibrio cholerae is a curved, rod-shaped bacteria with a flagellum. Sorry for the spelling mistake. This is flagellum. Okay. So it's a rod-shaped bacteria. You can see its shape is cylindrical and elongated, and it has a flagellum. And just in the taster week 1, we had studied that bacteria are a typical example of prokaryotic cell. Can you quickly look at this prokaryotic cell label of a bacteria and tell me why it is prokaryotic? Do you remember which cells we call prokaryotic and which cells we call eukaryotic? And why this bacteria is prokaryotic, do you remember?
Doesn't have a defined
nucleus, doesn't have membrane bound organelles. Okay. Khushi, just a reminder that stomach acid is low pH. Acids have low pH, not more pH. That is wrong. Be careful. Yes, coming back to prokaryotes don't have a nucleus, and our Vibrio cholerae is just like that. So it is a prokaryote. Prokaryotes have some differences and similarities with our cells. We are eukaryotic organisms. Our cells have well-defined nucleus, organelles. This is not there in bacteria. Okay, just a reminder. And how does the cholera toxin work and affect? Since the bell has rung, we are going to stop over here, and I will just add a video about how the cholera toxin affects, an animation, so that you can understand how it works. Don't worry, I will not ask about cholera toxin in your quiz because you need to learn a lot of things before understanding how the cholera toxin changes the water potential in the stomach, intestine lumen and intestine wall. But I would definitely want you to watch the video about how the toxin works. Okay, so that is all about cholera and how it is transmitted from contaminated food, water to others. I also want you to understand that cholera is a treatable disease. It can be cured through certain therapies like oral rehydration therapy. That is, if a person has cholera, then doctors suggest them to drink ORS water, which has lots of salt in it and lots of fluids, because the person is having diarrhea and vomiting, so they need to drink a lot of water with salt. Without salt, it is of no use. So having ORS, and there is also cholera vaccine, which protects people from having the virus itself. Like the virus, immediately as soon as having the bacteria killed by the immune system if you take the vaccine. Okay. So in the home task, because we did not get time to complete, what I'm going to do is I'm going to add some worked examples of questions around cholera and other pathogen diseases, whatever we covered, and just a short video about how the cholera toxin works. Okay, Asba? There will be no reading or anything. I gave you the cholera reading. You can revise from that. How cholera can be prevented and treated is also there in the reading. Only I will just add one video on cholera toxin, how the toxin is affecting your intestine, and some examples, worked example questions, so that you can prepare for your quiz on Monday. Okay? That's all. We have learned a lot over the course of 2 weeks. And let's hope that we can recall all this in the quiz on Monday. Have a nice weekend, everyone. And go ahead and see the resource sheet and revise. I will add the links immediately after the class. Bye and have a nice weekend.
Bye, Miss Amrita. Thank you.
Bye.